Welcome to the Path to Purpose interview show, where we share our unique and universal stories about finding and fulfilling our purpose. My name is Katja Rusanen, and I'm your host, transformational story coach, and mentor for purpose-driven entrepreneurs. My intention for this show is to inspire you on your path to purpose. Today, I have a pleasure to interview William Song, who is a productivity consultant with mindfulactionbanda.com. He leverages neuroscience to help business owners move from I have to productivity to joyful productivity. Joy equals more productive. His original dream was to run a hedge fund. And after he left his equity research job at the investment bank, his gut said to choose a different path. He became a hypnotherapist and a productivity consultant. And he runs both companies from San Francisco Bay Area in the US. And today he'll share with us how you can reduce procrastination. So let's get started here. Welcome, William, and I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
And as you mentioned in your bio that your original dream was something pretty different.
Yes.
So was there a special event that led you to this path? Did you wake up one morning and said, nah, not going to do a hedge fund. I'm going to go to be a hypnotherapist, or what happened? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I was working at the investment bank in equity research, and that was the stepping stone to later, go to a hedge fund and then own a hedge fund. But I realized while I was at the investment bank that I wanted to leave that job, and I decided, around that time I was wanting to leave that job, I wanted to go get my MBA. And so I quit my job, started studying for the GMAT, which you need to do well at to get to a good business school in the US. And as I was studying for the GMAT, I realized I do not want to study for the GMAT, which means I don't really want to go to business school. And I have known so many people that force themselves to go to business school or law school or some graduate program. And it's hard to force yourself to study for something you don't really want to do. So I decided, okay, well, I'm just not going to study for the GMAT, and I'll figure out something else. And instead of going back to the finance world, my gut said, let's explore some other things, and started exploring volunteer work kind of in the meantime. And I decided I want to open up a mail order company selling unique consumer products, because that had been a dream of mine for a long time, which is very different than hedge fund manager.
Yes.
But as I was going down that path and learning about that industry, I wanted to do some volunteer work, and I couldn't find anything interesting. And so I realized, well, maybe I'll just have to create my own volunteer thing. And I'll just say accidentally decided I'm going to help people stop smoking as a volunteer thing, and do that at medical offices. But none of the medical offices called me back. So I just decided I will offer this for free, because I knew a little bit about how to help people quit smoking in one session. So I'd learned a little bit about that before. And so I started doing that at coffee shops. I didn't have an office. I was just a volunteer, so I wasn't making any money from it. Started having some good success helping people to quit smoking. And then I decided, oh, maybe instead of the mailer company, I'll do this. So then I became a hypnotherapist, went back to school, did hypnotherapy, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm the accidental hypnotherapist. The volunteer work led me to do that because as I was helping people, I realized, you know what? I'm doing all the marketing. I'm doing all the everything. This could just be a business.
Totally. And I love how seemingly these actions just led you on your path, because the whole show is called Path to Purpose, and we all have our journeys, but we end up doing what we meant to be doing here, and everything is like a stepping stone, oh, okay. And I love also that you listen to your gut, that was allowing, give yourself that freedom. Instead of pushing yourself, I need to study, let me just take a moment here. And I value that, and that might be a golden nugget for our listeners too. Is there areas in my life where I'm pushing myself into? And today you said reducing procrastination. So before we go in there, I would love to know, in your opinion, of course, like what causes procrastination? Why do we procrastinate on the things we say we want to do?
Well, I have found there are multiple reasons, but I'll take one of the biggest reasons is that part of us has a conflict. So let's say that, I don't know, let's say I'm a writer and I want to write my novel. And part of me says, let's write the novel. Another part of me says, I don't want to write this novel. And I guess the biggest way to tell if you have a conflict is just see how are your results. If you're a writer and you are not making much progress on your novel, there's a good chance there's a conflict. So you don't even have to know what the conflict is. You just know the result, which is that, oh, I'm not getting anything done on my novel. So then you can suspect there might be a conflict here. And so the conflict would be, I think, the number one or one of the top reasons why we procrastinate, because part of us sees a bad outcome if we do this.
Yeah. And that's is something close to my heart as well, because I am a writer and I have had this book idea in my head and I have started to work on it. But since I wrote a trilogy once, and I know I can do it, but it is a lot of sitting down and typing. So that has been my conflict, like, do I really want to write the book? But I do. And I have started to do like microscopic actions toward it. But like what you shared, like definitely there, I could resonate with that. There was this inner conflict, like part of me was saying, I don't want to sit down and write a book.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. So
yeah, and sometimes the conflict is a small conflict we can clear up pretty easily, and sometimes it's a really big conflict. So I'll use the writing example again. Let's say that I want to write my novel. I'm not really making much progress. Maybe it's because part of me is scared that people won't like it. And that would be a very terrible outcome for part of my brain. And it would say, oh, I don't like being criticized.
yeah.
Or maybe it's not that. Maybe it's the opposite fear. Like, what if it does well?
Yeah.
That's scary. I might get a lot of success from this book, and I don't know what to do with that. That's another example. So there's the fear of failure, fear of success, fear of criticism, fear of losing friends, fear of opinions from family. I mean, just all sorts of fears that could be the core of the conflict.
Yeah. That is so true. And we can even have a both, like fear of failure and fear of success. So
Yeah.
you can have both ends. So,
or fear of I don't deserve this great thing to happen. So let's say that I'm a writer and I feel like, oh, I shouldn't have great writing success.
Yeah.
Or if you're a business owner, I shouldn't have great business success because I'm not the kind of person that deserves that. And that's a fairly common reason for us not to do as well as we could.
Totally. And like, who am I? Who am I to do this work?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned also that you leverage neuroscience to help business owners. So how does neuroscience relate to this productivity?
All right. So I will give a small example of that. Um, so I'm gonna use just a little bit of jargon here,
Okay.
just a little bit. So let's say that somebody is scared of, oh, I don't know, name a task or project that people commonly procrastinate on.
Admin, financing, making invoices.
Okay, let's take the invoices one. Let's do the invoices one. Many people do not like doing invoices. They have what we would call a negative association to invoicing. for whatever reason. It doesn't matter where it came from. It's a negative feeling. And so every time you think, oh, it's time to do the invoicing, this may not be exactly the way it is, but let's say there's this little signal that runs through your brain from one place to another, and you think invoices, and this goes to this neural network. It activates this negative feeling like, I don't want to do invoices. And that just gets so ingrained over time that it's just automatic. Every time we think of invoices, it activates this neural pathway, activates this neural network, and the result is we feel bad. So the chances of us doing the invoicing at that moment are pretty much zero.
Yeah.
Or 1% or something. Sometimes there's another factor like fear of not doing invoices. But anyhow,
pushes you to do it. You kind of have to.
Right. But let's say that that's not a fear at the moment. Then at that moment, we just won't do the invoices. So that neural network lights up, and it creates this chemical reaction in the body and what we interpret as this ugh, or uncomfortable feeling. So if you know that, then what you want to do is you want to kind of overwrite that neural pathway. And so it goes to a different neural network, and you now have a feeling of neutral type of emotion, or maybe something a little bit positive. And so, depending on what technique that you're using, you start to overwrite that by connecting a different thought with the original thought. So let's say the original thought is, it's the whatchamacallit, invoicing, and then it goes zip, and it creates this boom effect, like negative boom. Let's say you have another thought that kind of goes at the same time, and they both go at the same time, but this one is helping to get wired to this one. So now they're both activated at the same time, and you're kind of now leading it to a different neural pathway, or not neural pathway, a different neural network. So they wire together. And now you're wiring it to something more pleasant.
Yeah.
So they're connected. They're buddies now. And you end up guiding them to a new destination that is not so uncomfortable.
Thank you for sharing that. And that's
kind of... And to the neuroscientists out there, I know I'm not explaining it precisely, but please don't be kind in your criticisms.
Compassion in the comments. But it's kind of like explaining the functioning in a very simple terms. And then, so that kind of leads me to the next one, because you talk about also the joyful productivity. So I kind of see that we are kind of connecting this new pathway to something more joyful. Is that what you mean with the joyful productivity, or what's your definition? What is joyful productivity?
Yeah, I would say that if we are in the I have to kind of mindset, I have to do this, I have to do that, then it doesn't feel good to always be saying I have to. But if we can take those tasks like invoicing or whatever tasks we're talking about, and we categorize them from have to into I get to, that's more about the joyful productivity. It's where you're not feeling bad every time you have to do something that you don't like doing. Now, you may still not like invoicing, but you don't have to feel bad about doing the invoicing. You can actually feel neutral, or maybe, just maybe, you can feel a little bit positive. Just a tiny bit positive.
Yeah. So, yes, I love that idea. And now also want to check in there, like if someone would have this invoice issue or whatever they challenge has been, what would you say is the first step? Of course, I recommend people to reach out to William and get his help to do this work. But what could they do on their own to get started here?
Well, I would recommend that they learn the skill of talking to their subconscious mind. And some people might say that sounds complicated, But it could be on a small scale, just as simple as doing a quick meditation, whatever meditation of your choice, and then just speaking out loud, asking questions. So, as an example, if I were avoiding the invoicing, I could do something like this: pretend I just did my meditation, and then I would say, "Hey, subconscious, I noticed that we have been putting off the invoicing. What do you think about that?" And then I would pause and allow a thought to come up, and then my conscious mind, I'm going to tilt to the right for my conscious mind. I don't want to do it. Well, I just got feedback. It doesn't want to do it. But I don't stop there because, that wouldn't be useful. So then I would ask, well, subconscious, I understand you don't want to do it. What is it about the invoicing that bothers you? It's not fun. Well, I got more feedback. Then I kind of go back and forth, but I'm asking questions. I'm not telling my subconscious, you must do this.
Yeah.
I'm asking questions because I want to be curious about what exactly is the problem here. So let's pretend we went back and forth a few times, and it turns out, I get the real answer. The reason I don't like doing invoicing is because it reminds me of our old job, and that was painful. Even though we didn't do the invoicing, it reminds me of my old job. Well, now that's great data.
Yeah.
Because now we know there's some unresolved issue with our old job in this fictional example. And then I might say, well, what's going on about the old job? And then the subconscious says, well, this, and this. And then I might say, well, if it wasn't connected to the old job, would you mind doing the invoicing? No. And then you could do a different process to disconnect the pain of the old job from the invoicing. So they're two separate things now.
I love
and now then the subconscious is like, all right, let's do the invoicing.
Yeah, and I love the like just tilting your head as well,
Boom,
like
boom. Yeah.
like you can have this conversation, and it is really truly powerful. So test it out if you're tuning in here. Find the area, because I also want to leave our people with something to do. So test this out. Like find an area that you might have procrastinated, and test this conversation out, because you might be surprised what can come forward. And another thing, like I want to talk about and ask your tip on this, because we know this phenomenon, like before holiday or vacation, we are super duper productive. We just
Yep.
get done so much in a one day that it's incredible. So how can we be productive, this super productive during regular days?
There's a very easy solution to be productive almost every day. Make sure there's a holiday the next day. So that means we're going to have like 200 holidays a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we can't actually create all these holidays. So if you want to be, well, I don't think we can be at that level all the time. I think it's good for short bursts, but I think what we can do that's a little more realistic is to have more alignment inside.
Yeah.
As much as we can during regular days, not just right before the holiday. And if we have that check-in with ourselves on a regular basis, and we kind of uncover potential conflicts, then our productivity will be much greater than it was, because we're not spending a lot of time fighting. Instead, we're more united, and it's just easier when you're not fighting yourself.
Totally. It is. And I think also what has helped me personally, I create myself these timelines, like getting things done. And that has supported my productivity. I need time.
Yes.
If I have all the time in the world to do a task, it takes all the time. But if I need to get things done, and that goes a little bit of the holiday example, you need to finish those things before you leave. So
Yeah, I would agree. Having some type of timeline really is helpful. One of the challenges with a timeline is some people will say, well, William, I'm great when someone sets a timeline for me. Like I have to get this done for this client by this point, that this date works fine. But if I set my own timeline, I ignore it, which is a normal thing. And so it's because that person is categorizing the external deadline differently than the internal deadline. And to find a way that the internal deadline matters just as much as the external deadline, that's the trick there. How do we help that person to honor their internal deadlines? And that might mean, I don't want to get into all the details, but there are different ways that we can do that in a more enjoyable way so that it's not like, it feels like, oh, I gotta do this. It's more like, oh, I get to do this.
Yeah, that joyful productivity.
More joyful instead of the, because that feeling is not a good feeling.
Yeah. And you've given us a lot to think about today. And I know you have put together a special gift for my community that takes what we have been talking here to deeper levels. So can you share a little bit about the gift?
Sure. Well, actually, what happened was I had prepared this other gift for your tribe. And then this morning, when I was teaching some students in my productivity program, I mentioned a different idea for them. I said, hey, what do you think about this? And everybody liked it. And I thought, you know what? I'm changing my mind. I'm going to give a different gift to your tribe instead of my original gift. And it's going to be on how to talk to yourself before you plan out your week. So let's say it's Friday afternoon and you're planning for Monday and the week ahead. How do you plan more effectively? By talking to your subconscious mind and understanding if there's any conflict. And if there is, how do you help clear that conflict? So that way you can schedule things on your calendar, knowing that there's a much higher chance you'll get it done instead of Monday rolling around and you just ignoring the task. So that's the essence of the gift.
Nice, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you will find the link in the comments below. So check it out and get that gift because it will so support you to be truthfully productive and getting your work out there to the world. Yeah. I know you have gifts to share and you have that calling in your heart. So just use this as a tool and a way for you to be able to share your work. And now as we are wrapping up here, I'd like to ask if you have a special message that you would like to share.
Let's see. Well, I guess one of the things that I've really learned on this journey is that, and I think this applies to pretty much all of us, I didn't realize how much of my past was affecting my current state or my present results. But once I really got into hypnotherapy a lot more, I realized, oh, so much of what I accomplish or don't accomplish is based on my old programming. But if I change my beliefs or I change certain parts of my identity, then that means I will change so much other stuff. And so I would say to everybody, if you're not super happy with your current results, then consider finding out what beliefs or identity aspects need to be adjusted. So it's not about blaming myself, like, oh, I'm such an idiot, or oh, blah, blah. It's just about finding out what are the things to adjust, and then figuring out a way, maybe with some help or with some other resources, how do you adjust those elements? So it's not about blaming. It's just about finding out what needs to be adjusted.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, William, for your time today and all the work that you do in the world. And thank you for watching the Path of Purpose interview show. If you like this interview, hit the thumbs up button and leave a comment below. I'm sending you lots of light and love. Stay well and stay tuned for the next episode by subscribing to this channel. And you can also check the previous interviews. So bye for now.
Okay, thank you.